So, I want to talk about Dark Souls, and I know everyone's already talked about Dark Souls, right? The difficulty, the lore, the get good memes. But I've been playing through it again, and I can't stop thinking about it through this completely different lens. See, Dark Souls isn't just a game about fighting monsters in a dying world, it's actually one of the most brutal depictions of societal collapse I've ever seen. Not the explosion kind of collapse, the other kind, the slower, more insidious kind, the kind where a society is clearly dying, but refuses to actually die. And once you see it through that lens, the whole game transforms. Every NPC, every crumbling cathedral, every item description, they all start telling this much darker story about power, belief, and what happens when institutions outlive their purpose but keep grinding forward anyway. Part 1. The world that won't end. Let's start with the basic setup. The Dark Souls universe takes place during the Age of Fire, the golden age where gods ruled, there was light and order, civilization flourished. Gwyn was basically the king of the gods, everything had its place. But here's the thing, the Age of Fire was always supposed to end. That's just the natural cycle. Fire fades, the Age of Dark begins, and something new happens. Except, it's never been allowed to happen. When the fire started fading, when Gwyn realized his age was ending, he didn't accept it. He literally burned himself alive to keep it going, just threw himself into the first flame to buy a few more centuries, and then that became the blueprint. Over and over, for thousands of years, someone else does the same thing. Links the fire, prolongs the Age of Fire, keeps the same system running. The world isn't being saved, it's being prevented from changing. There's this concept in sociology called institutional persistence. Basically how social structures continue existing even after they've stopped serving their original function. Sometimes especially after they've stopped serving their function. Think about the late Roman Empire. By the 4th and 5th centuries, the Western Empire was clearly falling apart, but the elites kept going through the motions, appointing consuls, holding ceremonies, pretending the glory of Rome was intact. Because admitting it was over meant admitting their entire basis for power was finished. Dark Souls is that, but more honest. The flame isn't keeping the world alive anymore, it's keeping a specific order alive, Gwyn's order. And every time someone links the fire, they're not saving the world, they're just postponing the conversation about what comes next. Part 2. The Fire as Idealogy. Talk about what the fire actually represents. By the time you arrive, Gwyn's practical decision has been transformed into religious doctrine. The Way of White. This church that teaches linking the fire is holy, your duty, the ultimate good. This is how ideology works, right? Max Weber, this German sociologist, was terrified of this exact thing. Rational bureaucracy wrapped in sacred legitimacy, where systems that are really about maintaining power get disguised as religious or moral imperatives. And here's what gets me, nobody in power actually seems to believe it anymore. Guinevere in Anor Londo, she's an illusion, a literal projection to maintain the appearance of divine authority. The gods aren't ruling, they're just performing rulership. Framp's been giving the same sermon for centuries. The firekeepers serve the flame because that's what they're taught. They don't question it because questioning would mean confronting that their lives might be in service of something hollow. The Way of White doesn't rule through armies, it rules through making an alternative unthinkable. Of course, you link the fire. What else would you do? Let darkness consume everything? They've set up a false binary, either perpetuate our system or embrace apocalypse. No third option, no maybe the Age of Dark is just different, not evil. Just link the fire or doom the world, and that's incredibly effective social control. Part 3. Undead As Alienation. The undead curse is where Dark Souls gets really psychologically dark. You can't truly die. You die, you come back at the bonfire, over and over. You're trapped in this cell with a vague goal. Ring some bells, link the fire, but you don't really remember why. Every death chips away at your memories, your sense of self. You're just going through motions, and if you lose that purpose entirely, you go hollow, you become a mindless husk. Emil Durkheim studied suicide and found that it wasn't really about individual psychology. It was about social integration. When people felt disconnected from their community, when they couldn't locate themselves within a meaningful moral order, they became suicidal. He called this anomie, normlessness, being adrift without social anchors. Hollowing is basically anomie as a supernatural curse. Think about the NPCs. Solaire searching for his son, Siegmeyer trying to maintain his honor. They all have these thin threads of meaning keeping them going, and you watch as those threads fray. The world doesn't support meaning anymore. The social structures that would give their quests significance are all decayed. You're all undead laborers in a dead society, going through the motions of a civilization that stopped functioning ages ago. You're not living, you're just not dying, and you keep going because stopping means confronting the hollowness of it all. Dark Souls made that into a game mechanic. Every time you die and respawn, you're experiencing that cycle of meaningless repetition, and the only way to escape is to either burn yourself to perpetuate the system or become a Dark Lord, which is ambiguous at best. Part 4. Faith as a weapon. The Way of White isn't just preserving tradition, they're actively managing information, controlling narrative, weaponizing faith. Think about what you're told versus what's actually true. Frampt says you're the chosen undead, destined and special. But you realize there are lots of chosen undead. You're just the latest in a long line of sacrifices. The church teaches that linking the fire is salvation. But Carthy tells you a completely different story, that Gwyn feared humans and the dark, so he linked the fire to prevent humanity from inheriting the world, that you're perpetuating your own oppression. The game doesn't tell you who's right definitively, but what's clear is that the church has been hiding alternative narratives. Knowledge is controlled. Look at the Witch of Izalith. She tried to create her own flame independent of Gwyn's order. The result was chaos. But was that because creating a new flame was inherently wrong, or because she was punished for trying to break from the system? Antonio Gramsci talked about cultural hegemony, how dominant groups maintain power by making their worldview seem like common sense. The Way of White does this perfectly. They make doubt seem like corruption, like spiritual weakness. And here's the genius stroke. They make suffering sacred. You're undead, cursed, in constant pain, but the church reframes it as a trial, a test. You're suffering because you're chosen. Your pain has meaning, as long as you give yourself to the flame. Medieval Christianity taught that poverty was virtuous, that suffering brought you closer to God. Modern capitalism has the grind set culture that sanctifies overwork as virtue. Dark Souls just makes the metaphor explicit. Your suffering isn't incidental, it's the point. You're supposed to struggle, to die, to lose yourself, because that makes you useful fuel. Part 5. The Architecture of Power. The physical structure of Lordran is doing so much storytelling work. The world is vertical, and that verticality is a map of social hierarchy. At the top, Anor Londo. Beautiful, pristine, bathed in golden light, massive cathedrals designed to inspire awe. Except, it's empty. The gods are gone. Guinevere is an illusion. The whole thing is a stage set, maintained to preserve the appearance of divine rule. Pierre Bourdieu talked about symbolic capital, prestige, legitimacy, the aura of authority. Anor Londo is pure symbolic capital. It's not governing anything, but it looks like it should be. Below that, Undead Parish and Undead Burg, the middle layers, remnants of common society still clinging to faith, maintaining rituals. They're not living well, but they have just enough to stay invested in the status quo. And then, Blighttown, built in a literal pit filled with poison and disease. The people there have been completely abandoned, left to rot in the toxic waste of civilization, and nobody up above even thinks about them. The verticality is perfect social stratification. Society's organized into hierarchical layers, with power concentrated at the top and deprivation at the bottom. And here's the kicker. Even though the gods are gone and the system's failing, the structure persists. You still have to climb from bottom to top. The hierarchy remains even after its architects have died. The society has become its own skeleton. Part 6. Fire versus Dark, the false binary. The whole game builds toward this choice. Link the fire or walk away. Most fantasy stories would make this clear. Light is good, dark is evil. But Dark Souls inverts it. The fire should be the good option, but it's presented with all this ambiguity. It's light and order, but also stagnation, oppression. Everyone advocating for it seems off. Frampt is manipulative. The Way of White is authoritarian. Meanwhile, the dark is associated with humanity, with potential, the unknown, but also possibility. Carthy says Gwyn feared the dark because he feared humans, that the dark soul was powerful, so Gwyn linked the fire to prevent the age of humans from beginning. If that's true, then linking the fire isn't salvation. It's prolonging a system designed to keep humanity subservient. Fire and dark should be thesis and antithesis, creating synthesis through dialectical change. But the tragedy is that the dialectic has been jammed. The Age of Fire refuses to yield. It just repeats, getting more degraded each time. The game won't let you actually break the cycle. Just choose which version of the cycle you prefer. Real change isn't offered as an option. You get variations within the system, not alternatives to it. Link the fire or become Dark Lord. Both maintain the Wheel of Ages. The choices matter, but they're contained within a framework you didn't choose and can't escape. Part 7, you are the system's tool. Let's talk about you, the player. The game calls you the chosen undead. You're told you're special, destined, and on your first playthrough, you probably believed it. But then you find messages from other players, bloodstains showing how they died, NPCs who were chosen too. The crestfallen warrior tells you, but even the chosen undead gets to experience death. Countless times. He's seen this before. You're not the first. The game is quietly deconstructing the entire chosen one concept. You're not special, you're just stubborn. Chosen undead is whoever makes it far enough to link the fire. It's a title applied retroactively to the successful, not a destiny, and linking the fire isn't heroism, it's just doing what the system needs. You're not saving the world, you're maintaining someone else's world. This is false consciousness. When people act against their own interests because they've internalized the ideology of those in power, you think you're a hero, so you do exactly what the ruling class needs, sacrifice yourself to perpetuate their age. You overcome incredible challenges, you defeat gods and demons, you earn that ending, and then you link the fire, and that's it. You burn. Nothing really changes. Your individual heroism was absorbed and neutralized by the structure you thought you were saving. Even the Dark Lord ending has this ambiguity. Are you freeing humanity or just starting a new cycle? Will the Age of Dark eventually stagnate too? The game doesn't answer. Because maybe there is no answer. Systems don't have endings, they have transitions, and every transition eventually becomes a new system, which will eventually resist its own transition. The terror of continuity. So what is Dark Souls really about? I think it's about what happens when a civilization enters decline but refuses to acknowledge it. When institutions outlive their function. When myths become prisons. It's about the horror of continuity, of things that should end but don't. And that's scarier than any monster, right? A dragon you can fight, but a system, an ideology embedded in every bonfire, every NPC, every stone of Anor Londo. How do you fight that? You can't kill it because it's not alive. You can't change it because everyone's invested in keeping it the same. You can't escape it because you're part of it. The best you can do is go through the motions until you go hollow, or sacrifice yourself to keep it going, or walk away into ambiguity. Dark Souls shows you institutions that are rigid and permanent and dead, but also decaying and unstable. You get oppression without security, anxiety without freedom, just rot, slow, inevitable, denied rot, and everyone's pretending it's fine. The illusion of Guinevere still smiles, Frampt still gives his speech, the performance continues even though the theatre's empty. I think about our own world sometimes. Climate change is happening, but we keep burning fossil fuels because the economy needs growth. Work is meaningless, but we keep grinding because we need healthcare and rent money. We create these myths to make it feel like our sacrifices matter. But what if we're just linking the fire over and over? What if we're the chosen undead of late capitalism, told we're special while we burn ourselves to keep a dead system running? Dark Souls just shows you a world where that's literally what's happening, and then it makes you do it. There's a line from the opening, and the lords go without thrones. The fire fades, the lords go, the age ends, except it doesn't, because the thrones remain. The structure remains, waiting for someone new to believe. That's the real ending. There is no ending, just continuation. The society refuses to die, and so everyone's trapped in its half-life, undead citizens of an undead civilization, going hollow by degrees while maintaining rituals that stopped meaning anything centuries ago. If Bloodborne is about the madness of seeking knowledge and Sekiro is about the chains of duty, then Dark Souls is about the absolute terror of a world that won't let itself end. The sociological horror of institutional persistence taken to its apocalyptic conclusion. And maybe that's why it resonates. Because on some level, we recognize that world. We live in it. Anyway, that got heavy. But yeah, Dark Souls through a sociology lens. A game about rolling and stabbing that's actually about the death grip of ideology and the hollowness of false purpose. Let me know what you think, and maybe consider the Dark Lord ending next time. Not that it'll help. Thanks for watching.